Chris Mad Dog Russo hurled vile insults at Lamar Jackson and ripped John Harbaugh. We talk about that. Jim Harbaugh praising Lamar Jackson on the Baltimore Ravens and so much more coming up next here on this Crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day, free and available for you all podcasting platforms, including video form on YouTube where you can like and subscribe to the channel, and an audio form where you can follow along and subscribe as well. 5 days a week plus more daily Ravens coverage. So tell a friend, tell a family member if they want some daily Ravens coverage, send them over our way here on Locked On Ravens. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is Crossover Thursday. Is presented by PrizePicks. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Got the Harbaugh coming up in full force on Monday night. David Droegemeier of Locked On Chargers will be joining me to talk about everything we need to know leading up to game time with that game. But we have some things to talk about here before we get to that. Lamar Jackson's obviously been taking a lot of criticism for his game against the Steelers, which honestly, in my opinion, he was, didn't play great, but he wasn't the main reason, not even close to why Baltimore lost the game. Sure, he contributed, but again, you can point to a lot of different things. We've talked about the Stephen A. beef, talked about this, that, and the other. Well, Chris Mad Dog Russo was with Stephen A. and Molly Graham, Kimberly Martin over on First Take and talked about Lamar. And Mad Dog hurled some pretty vile insults Lamar Jackson's way. First of all, called his performance against Pittsburgh putrid and went on the whole tangent. It was terrible. Went on the whole tangent about how against the Steelers is 1-4, can't beat Mahomes, yada, yada, yada. And then the conversation went on and he was trying to prove a point or just, I guess, get one up on, the guys he was sitting with, the people he was sitting with. And he goes, one more thing for you. Lamar Jackson can put those MVPs where the sun don't shine. Like, what's the point of that? Like, why would you say that? It's ridiculous. I'm laughing because it's just utterly ridiculous. And he was going full bat for Josh Allen for MVP. And again, it's varying how much, obviously Super Bowl MVP would be a lot better than that. And he went in on John Harbaugh too, talked about how, hey, John Harbaugh, how about your team doesn't commit so many penalties, that he's tired of Harbaugh as well. He was going scorched earth, but man, this was like some pretty wild stuff here from Mad Dog. And it was actually crazy because Stephen A. was the voice of reason in this whole thing. Stephen A. has had this whole dating back to last week, and it's been obviously far beyond last week, but recently been beefing with Lamar. Lamar got on Twitter and we had that whole conversation last week in a separate episode. It's just all this stuff. Again, do we really care about all this? I mean, we know if you watch Lamar Jackson, if you look at the stats, this type of stuff there's no basis for it. Like, we can all admit Lamar Jackson is not perfect because nobody is. We can all admit Lamar didn't play great against Pittsburgh, but Stephen A. was the one that said one game does not define a season, which is true. So, hey, little round of applause for Stephen A. right there. But it was kind of wild that Mad Dog was saying all that crazy stuff. I mean, saying that about the MVPs, like, okay, I don't even know what the basis was for that, if we're being honest. It really felt like he was just trying to get one up on everybody. I don't know what that was. Jim Harbaugh, though, was very complimentary of Lamar Jackson and John Harbaugh in the Ravens. Obviously, Jim and John have that brotherly relationship. He called John, best friends. No one could have a better brother. Learned so much from him and admired him and talked about his competitiveness, his toughness, and, the way he pulls all that out of his guys. And then praised Justin Herbert, his quarterback, as one of the best the NFL has ever seen. And he ended up talking about Lamar. Asked about Lamar, said that, quote, he's right there with Justin. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the game currently and one of the best quarterbacks in the history of the National Football League. So very high praise there from Jim Harbaugh ahead of that Week 11 Chargers matchup. So, man, craziness all the way around. And we got a crazy game coming up on Monday night. So, again, David Droegemeier of Locked On Chargers who's going to be here with us to dive into everything Ravens and Chargers as we get ready for a big Monday Night Football matchup. David, I've been looking forward to this one really since it came out from the schedule makers because we know the ties between these two teams, John Harbaugh and Jim Harbaugh. We know the brotherly connection they have. Chargers went out there. They got Joe Ortiz and a lot of former Ravens players to help them be on the path they are now. And now you're looking at two of the best teams in the AFC, in my opinion, duking it out in prime time, something that I think every NFL fan should be excited about.
They absolutely should. This game right here has all of the things that you want, right? It has inside storylines. It has playoff implications. It has that family connection between the two brothers. And of course, Jim Harbaugh is saying, hey, yeah, we've exchanged pleasantries and hey, have a good week. But let's be honest here. Behind closed doors, there's nothing more that Jim Harbaugh wants than to get that W back from his brother, who obviously is up 2 games on little bro Jim. And hey, I'm the youngest of 7, and I am the youngest of 4 boys, 3 older brothers. Anytime any of my brothers beat me in anything, no matter what it was, I was trying to get that lick back, and I guarantee you, Jim is looking to do the same.
I'm the oldest of 3. It's me and my 2 brothers, so it's kind of poetic, right? Oldest on the Ravens, youngest on the Chargers. We kind of have that going here for both of us. But I think, David, when you look at this game, I've been telling everybody that this is a much bigger game than a lot of people are making it out to be. Because obviously, when you look at the standings, the Ravens and the Chargers both sitting in pretty prime wild card spots right now. And when you look at the Ravens side of things, we'll start there. I think the biggest thing offensively is what we saw last week against Pittsburgh. This has been a historic level offense for the majority of the season, but obviously they go to Pittsburgh last week and Lamar Jackson doesn't have a great game. They don't really get the run game going with Derrick Henry. They try to claw their way back after the defense does everything that they can to hold on. And then the 2-point conversion happens once they score a touchdown to try to tie the game. Derrick Henry not on the field. And they end up losing it. So essentially the storyline here for Baltimore is a bounce back game against the Chargers defense that certainly has playmakers on it. There's no shortage of talent on that Chargers defense. And when you talk about for Lamar Jackson in particular, there's so many different ways the defenses have to defend him. And one of the ways the defenses do a good job of that is if they have multiple stars that can do multiple different things, to not have as much manpower focused on 8 different things at once. So to me, you look at some of those Chargers playmakers on defense, and that's going to be a really cool matchup to watch, in my opinion. But the Ravens offense, I think, has to have a bounce back game in this one for themselves. They have too much talent on that offense to not do it, but it's just a matter of how. We saw that Chargers defense shut down the Bengals in the first half of their Sunday night game, but then the Bengals come roaring back in the second half. Now the Chargers come out with a win, but there are a lot of ways that both these teams can win, a lot of ways that both these teams can lose. But the thing that I love is that both John and Jim have such belief in their quarterbacks. Obviously, John with Lamar, Jim with Justin. And hey, we heard Jim talk about Lamar, saying that, he's right up there with Justin as one of the greatest this NFL league has ever seen. And right now, Lamar, there's a lot of conversation about the MVP and what's going on. Is he going to win his 3rd? Is he not? Josh Allen, all these other players. But offensively, the Ravens took a step back, but that's not the norm with this group. The norm, I think, is more so what we've seen over the course of the season. And now it's up to the Chargers if they want to be able to just be on that other side of it with Pittsburgh. Can they stop the Ravens? That's the big question.
It is definitely the big question. And the Ravens have, the most high-powered offense in the entire NFL as far as points per game is concerned. They're putting up 30 points every single time they go out there on average. And this is a team that you can't look at this offensively and say, oh, well, it's just a running quarterback, just make sure you'd stop his legs. We're not here. We're not there anymore. We're at 24 touchdowns to 5 interceptions for Lamar to be accompanied with Derrick Henry, who's already over 1,100 yards rushing. So it really is pick your poison on the offensive side, right? So, you have to play contain. You have to make sure that you have somebody to spy Lamar Jackson, because obviously he's the most gifted running quarterback in probably the history of the National Football League. And so you have to respect that. You have to make sure that you have athletic guys to be able to combat against that, but also have the requisite toughness to go out there and the endurance to go out there and hit and drag down Derrick Henry however many times they tote the rock. The good thing for the Chargers is they have a top 11 run defense, and roughly top 11 pass defense. They're right up there towards, those type of metrics. So they do a very good job at limiting explosive plays in the passing game, and in the running game for that matter. So for the Chargers, they're really going to have to try to figure out one way. For me, it's definitely more fixed on stopping the run, because one thing I noticed is that when the Ravens don't run for 100 yards, they lose. And all 4 of their losses, they have run for less than 100 yards rushing. So definitely want to contain that running game as much as possible. Obviously, that's a lot easier said than done.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think part of the allure of that Ravens run game, obviously being so dominant, is when they set it up properly, the play action game is just unbeatable, because you have to account for Derrick Henry and even the threat of Lamar with his legs when he decides to use them. But when that's not going, teams don't necessarily, they'll obviously respect Derrick Henry. There's always some, floor level of respect for both Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson. But teams don't have to worry about it as much if it's not gashing them. And you don't have to bring those guys down in the box. You don't have to put as much manpower into that. So really big key for the Chargers, both obviously stop the run for the Ravens and also limit what Lamar Jackson can do with his arm over there. But defensively, David, the Ravens defense showed up for really what seemed like the first time in a close game all season against Pittsburgh. And now, look, I'll let you in on a secret. That Chargers offense is a lot better than that Steelers offense. That's just a little. But again, the Ravens, they did what they were supposed to do in that game. And I thought it was a very encouraging sign. Baltimore switched up some of their secondary personnel. Marcus Williams benched again, second time this season that's happened. They brought in Ardarius Washington to play next to Kyle Hamilton, and they did a really good job. Trey White, who is someone that a lot of people had kind of written off after going to Los Angeles, all those injuries in Buffalo, had 2 huge pass breakups on George Pickens and played really well. So they're trying to find the right personnel packages, but this is a great run defense. This is the best run defense in the league. Yeah. And obviously we know, and Ravens fans are very familiar with Greg Roman and his game. Greg Roman likes to get those big personnel packages in there and run that football. So obviously when you talk about the biggest storyline for Baltimore's defense here, it's continuing to dominate on the ground on defense against the team that is going to want to establish that early. So obviously Justin Herbert can throw the football, right? These are 2 great quarterbacks in Lamar Jackson and Justin Herbert. But to me, I think that if you can stop that Chargers passing or running game, it will in turn kind of limit what the Chargers can do offensively, because just like we talked about the Ravens play action, it's the same thing with the Chargers where you don't necessarily have to put as much manpower over there. So in the secondary, it's going to be about stopping some of those receivers. Quentin Johnston has had somewhat of a redemption year over there in Los Angeles after a tough rookie season.
6 touchdowns.
Yeah, a lot of conversations. You got 2 second-year guys, Zay Flowers over in Baltimore and Johnston over in Los Angeles. But if you can stop what Los Angeles wants to do on the ground, I think that's Baltimore's biggest story here.
It definitely is. And hey, like it's definitely Jekyll and Hyde as far as that part of the defense is concerned. Really, really good against the run, and the literal worst in the league against the pass as far as passing yards allowed. So that's just what it is. I don't know how much the Chargers are going to want to bang their heads against that wall, but we're going to talk about that and what the Chargers want to do here right after this.
We absolutely are. So coming up to the second part of the show, we're going to be diving into everything Chargers and the biggest storylines for Los Angeles, heading into a big Monday night football game. So be sure to stay tuned. We have plenty to talk about on this crossover Thursday at Locked On Ravens and Locked On Chargers. First, this show is brought to you by Bilt. Listen up, renters. Ever feel like you're stuck in this loop of rent payments, just watching your money vanish into thin air? It's frustrating, right? We've all been there feeling like we're burning cash with those rent checks. But here's the deal. Bilt Rewards has figured out a way to make rent more rewarding. Say goodbye to the money bonfire and hello to a renter's revolution. With Bilt is breaking ground as a neighborhood rewards program that hooks you up with points on your rent. Every month, pay your rent and watch the Bilt points roll in. Use points to jet up on a dream vacation. Put your points towards a flight or hotel stay with 500 plus airlines and 700,000 plus hotels and properties. You can also use your points to book fitness studio classes, redeem them towards a future rent payment. They're designed to meet your lifestyle. Pay rent hassle-free through the Bilt Rewards app. Your rent game just got a major upgrade. Bilt points have been consistently ranked the highest value point currency by the Points Guy and Bankrate. Earn points by paying rent right now when you go to joinbilt.com/lockedonnfl. That's JOINBILT.com/lockedonnfl. Make sure to use our URL so they know we sent you. Joinbilt.com/lockedonnfl to start earning points with your rent payments today. And this show is brought to you by FanDuel. And FanDuel has so many good things going on over there. You can get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So to get 100 in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, your live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Or get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more at FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Back here on Crossover Thursday with David Droegemeier of Locked On Chargers. I am Kevin Ostreicher of Locked On Ravens, taking you through Harbaugh. Another chapter in that, which is going to be really exciting for everybody involved and just two good football teams in general. I think for me, David, the Chargers are a team that intrigues me in a lot of different ways. But on the offensive side of the ball, what do you think is the biggest storyline for Los Angeles here?
Yeah, so biggest storyline for the Chargers going into this game, going up against an offense that obviously can score a ton of points and has proved it through, 10, 11 games of this season with the Ravens. The focus goes to, can the Chargers match that? Can they, put up points? And how are they going to do that? They're going to have to do that by continuing to utilize the absolute skyrocketing rookie wide receiver, Ladd McConkey. Ladd McConkey has been an absolute just boon for the Chargers. Last 4 games, 50-plus receiving yards in every game. 2 games over 110 yards. He had 2 crucial catches on that game-winning drive against the Cincinnati Bengals that put the Chargers in position to get that J.K. Dobbins walk-off touchdown run. He was a little bit banged up. He missed practice, today, but I think that's more maintenance. I think he'll be out there for sure on on Monday night. This game clearly means a lot, right? It's very, very important to the playoff seeding and, kind of where you want to and how you want to position yourselves going into the playoffs. Obviously, you can't count your chickens before they hatch. You got to get there. But this right here is a absolute real test for the Chargers and their offense if they can keep pace. Because, hey, this game has the possibility of turning into a shootout. And if that is the case, Justin Herbert and Ladd McConkey are going to have to be on the same page, and they're going to have to connect multiple times to keep up.
Yeah, and I think for the Ravens, they have personnel in that secondary to be able to match what the Chargers have. But obviously, as we talked about in the first part of the show, David, their pass defense has struggled mightily this season. So, the talent is there, but some of the execution has not been, and others as well. So McConkey's just been a stud this entire season. I know when the Chargers made that move to go up there and get him, they had a plan in mind, and obviously he's fit what they do extremely well. Look, they've had opportunities. Keenan Allen now in Chicago. Mike Williams has seemed like he's been everywhere at this point now. Obviously Jets and now Pittsburgh. Yeah. And those opportunities have opened up. And obviously we talked about Quentin Johnston, but Ladd McConkey's taking advantage of a huge workload. And he's a guy, route running, being in the right spot at the right time. You need 6 yards, he'll get you 7. Like, he's a guy that you have to know where he is on the field at all times. And for the Chargers, that run offense, we talked about when Greg Roman was here in Baltimore and, how they were like always number 1 in attempts and number 1 in yards per attempt. Well, Chargers right now, more of a balanced unit. Net yards per attempt, passing offense-wise, they're 11th in the league. Rush offense, yards per attempt, they're 20th, but they are top 10 in carries that they actually go out there and do. So familiar faces with JK and obviously Gus Edwards, who a lot of people here in Baltimore are so happy for JK and how he's been able to bounce back in less.
I was going to say, we got to talk about JK Dobbins, obviously playing against the Ravens.
Yeah.
For him to have the type of season that he has had after a litany of not just small injuries, major career ending possible injuries like torn ACLs, torn Achilles. Like this guy's been through the absolute ringer. So for him to not be in that negative cloud energy and just quit, and for him to fight and come all the way back and be as productive as he was before he got hurt, is such a beautiful thing to watch. And I think for my money, I think he's got to be a dark horse in that comeback player of the year voting.
I would love it. He has my vote. He's a guy that, he worked so hard when he was here in Baltimore, coming back from those injuries, and was on his way to another great year. I feel like last year, it was week 1. Obviously, he suffered that Achilles injury. So he's come back and been absolutely incredible. One more offensive question, because I have to ask this to you, David. I'm sure a lot of Ravens fans are wondering, just how has the Greg Roman experience been for you and Chargers fans in Los Angeles? Obviously, there were plenty of ups and plenty of downs when it came to his time in Baltimore. How have you enjoyed the Greg Roman experience so far?
Yeah, I think it's been a little bit hard to completely gauge how the Greg Roman experience has gone, because Justin Herbert had that high ankle sprain earlier in the season. And so when you're trying to learn a new offense, and not even that, but he had the plantar fascia injury before, in training camp, while he was still trying to nail down the offense and go out there and rep it. Because obviously, when you have an injury and you're the starting quarterback, that throws a big wrench in how the offense is going to operate, because, they're going to try to focus on putting that on Justin. And, you can be in the books as much as you want, but nothing substitutes for going out there on that field and repping it with your teammates and getting that chemistry that you absolutely have to be able to execute at the highest level. There's been some frustrations for sure with some of the running attempts on first down, just banging your head against the wall. But I feel like that has kind of changed over the course of the last few games, where Greg Roman has realized that there are times to stay committed to the run, if you're trying to put a ball game away, right? And there are other times where you have to open it up and air it out. And you have to, utilize your, quarterback that has probably one of the strongest arms in the NFL. You got to let it rip. And Justin showed in the first half against the Cincinnati Bengals that when he's on, he is one of the best quarterbacks in the league, bar none. Like, he can make every single throw in the book. I think as the days and the weeks and the games go by, Greg Roman is becoming more and more aware of that fact.
Yeah, situational awareness was a word that was used quite a bit over here in Baltimore, and honestly still is, and even Greg Roman now not with the team anymore. But let's move over to defense, David, for the Chargers. Obviously, this is a unit that, as we mentioned, has star power on it, and I think when you look at some of what they've done this season, their pass defense has been great, top 5 in terms of net yards per attempt. That rushing defense, those left a little to be desired, 23rd in the league in yards per attempt there. What's the biggest storyline on that side?
Yeah, but so the thing is with the Chargers is, they probably give up a little bit more rushing yards than people would appreciate or like, but they do an excellent job of limiting explosive plays. And so they keep that, two safety shell on the back end to really try to force the opposing offenses to get everything the hard way. It's the death by 1,000 paper cuts. Like, we'll let you dink and duck down the field. We're not going to let you go and get the big bomb. Like, we're going to try to do everything we can to try to limit that. And, the Chargers are a little bit banged up on the defensive side. Khalil Mack missed the last game with a groin injury, played the previous game, but only played 4 snaps. So for the better part of 2 weeks, he's been out. So we'll see if he's going to be able to come back. Obviously, having a pass rush against the Ravens is extremely, extremely important. Also, Denzel Perryman is probably going to miss this game. He also has a groin, which sucks because he's a prototypical, go thumper, go beat somebody up type linebacker. And obviously you would want to have that against Derrick Henry, but unfortunately that's not going to happen. And then one of the Chargers 5th round corners, Cam Hart, he's in concussion protocol. He has played way better than anybody ever expected, and he was thrust right into the starting lineup and forced to go out there and do exactly what he has had to do. And fortunately for the Chargers, he's played extremely well. We'll see if he's going to be able to make it through concussion protocol to play on Monday night. And then the pass rush, Joey Bosa had 8 pressures in the last game. The first time that he played more than 50 snaps the entire season. He's had to deal with some different ailments, but it looks like he's healthy. Tuli Tuipulotu is the hottest pass rusher on the planet right now. He has 7 sacks in his last 3 games, and with the more opportunities, he's been absolutely lighting it up. So it's been great to see that. But it's all about, can the Chargers' banged-up defense slow down the Ravens enough to keep this one competitive and give themselves a shot at the end?
And you talked about that essentially bend, don't break defense. And obviously, if you want to talk about more Ravens connections, Jesse Minter was obviously in Baltimore for a while and was under Mike McDonald at Michigan before being hired by the Chargers to be their defensive coordinator. Yeah. And that's kind of what the Ravens have employed. And that's what their bread and butter is as well, where you're not going to beat them with the explosive plays. If you want to take the short stuff, want to take the intermediate stuff, they say, be my guest.
Yeah.
But once you get down to that red area, you're not getting anything but a field goal. So that's kind of the many ways that the Ravens and the Chargers are connected. And while you laid out the injury report for the Chargers a little bit there with some of the guys who were missing, Roquan Smith ended up suffering an injury during the game last week against Pittsburgh with a hamstring. He did not practice on Wednesday, so we're going to have to monitor that. That'd be a big loss.
He's the leading tackler in the NFL this year.
Yeah, best game of the year definitely last week against the Steelers. He's struggled a little bit throughout the season, but, I mean, not having Roquan is essentially a huge loss. We all know that. And then Travis Jones, who's been a really good defensive lineman, he missed with an ankle injury. Monitor that. Arthur Millette, who missed last week with a calf injury, he also was not at practice. And then Snoozy Kane, who is essentially one of their ace special teamers, he also was not at practice as well. So injuries to monitor, but we have a long way to go before now and Monday night. And coming up in the final part of the show, we're going to be diving into keys to victory for each team, what each team needs to do to win this game. Stay tuned. Plenty to get to on this crossover of Locked On Ravens and Locked On Chargers. First, this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. And I want to take a moment to say thank you to my family. You know, they've been there for me through everything, and I wouldn't really be in this position without them. So I want to just shout them out. And this month, it's all about gratitude, right? All along with the people I just shouted out, there's another person we don't get to thank enough, and that's ourselves. It's sometimes hard to remind ourselves, but we're trying our best to make sense of everything. And in this crazy world, that isn't easy. Here's a reminder to send some thanks to the people in your life, including yourself. And therapy has so many different benefits, whether it's learning positive coping skills, how to set boundaries, empowering you to become the best version of yourself. And it isn't just for those who've experienced major trauma. It's for everyone. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. Switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Let the gratitude flow with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Crossover Thursday, Locked On Ravens, Locked On Chargers. Kevin Oestreicher, David Droegemeier, taking you through everything you need to know heading into Monday night's action. Just a reminder, today's crossover edition of both Locked On Ravens and Locked On Chargers is brought to you by PrizePicks. So to PrizePicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use that code, all lowercase, LockedOnNFL, to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Now, David, both these teams have plenty of paths to victory, and I think that we will see many different iterations of them play out over the course of the full 60 minutes. Now, when we're talking about the Ravens and what they have to do to win this game, first of all, I think that you have to, as we talked about, establish the run early against this Chargers defense. Don't let them off the hook. We know that, again, as you mentioned, they have maybe given up a little more in the rushing department than you would like to. I think the Ravens need to take advantage of that fact. And part of that is being able to mix in different things. Derrick Henry, Justice Hill, who's played really well. Keaton Mitchell has been back for a couple weeks, but he hasn't really had a lot of run. I'd love to see the Ravens get Keaton Mitchell involved in this game for a couple of carries and see what he can do with his lightning quick ability. The Ravens haven't had Lamar Jackson run. Lamar hasn't run nearly as much as he has over the course of his first 6 seasons. Now, part of that's by design, and obviously he is lighting it up right now through the air.
Last year's
as well.
Playoffs probably has something to do with that.
Yeah. Sure. Man. That's almost like, everyone in Baltimore they've thrown that out of their minds. They said, what game? They played in the AFC Championship.
Right, yeah.
No, they didn't. But we saw that even that happened last week where Derrick Henry fumbles on the second play of the game, and they don't really get him involved for the rest, finishes the game with 13 carries. You bring in Derrick Henry, not to be a 30-carry guy, but you want to use him, even if it's not even running them with the ball, because it's the gravity. I love to use the word Locked On Ravens listeners are sick of me saying this word, but it's gravity. when Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson are on the field, there is a certain level of attention you have to pay to both guys. Because,
Absolutely.
Look, JK and Gus were great. They were awesome in Baltimore, but neither of those guys are Derrick Henry.
That's true.
Part of that is just because Derrick Henry's a mountain of a man. Like, it's just I wouldn't want to go out there and try to tackle him, let alone all these NFL defenders. So I give a lot of props to. So the first thing is you got to establish the run if you're the Ravens. Second of all, I think you have to get in Justin Herbert's head a little bit. The pass rush has been a little bit inconsistent for the Ravens this year. It has been better over the last couple of weeks. But guys like Odafe Owe, who had 3 sacks against Pittsburgh. I talked about Travis Jones. Nnamdi Madubuike, who's their big $100 million man in the middle of that interior. He's looked better over these last few weeks. Kyle Van Noy, who I know you're very familiar with, Mr. Kyle Van Noy.
Old friend alert.
Old friend.
Yeah.
He's doing his thing. Was great at the beginning of the
7
season.
7 sacks, man.
Yeah, he was on it. He was on it. So those guys, if they can get to Justin Herbert and get in his head a little bit, Herbert's a vet, right? He's not going to be subject to like, rookie quarterback it gets flustered by a
definitely not.
That's not what we're saying. That's not what I'm saying here. But at least you have to make him think, can this offensive line block me? By the way, that Chargers offensive line has some dudes on it. So easier said than done in that regard as well. But I think that if you're the Ravens, the key to victory is if you can get pressure on Justin Herbert, that's the big thing. And here's a final thing, David. We've talked about Chargers offense, Chargers defense, Ravens offense, Ravens defense, Ravens special teams. Last thing here is Justin Tucker has to be Justin Tucker. Not Justin Tucker from this year, though. The Justin Tucker that we have been accustomed
historically
to seeing.
Great.
Yes,
Justin
greatest kicker of all time, in my opinion. So we know
Tucker
Tucker struggled this season. He's missed 6 kicks and has struggled even from inside 50 this season, which has been such a shock.
Yeah, he's so automatic, right?
Yeah, 50 plus the last 2 seasons has been iffy for him, and he's hooking all these balls wide left, which is actually kind of a trend throughout the league for a lot of kickers. So we saw it against Pittsburgh. The Ravens lost by 2 points. Justin Tucker left 6 points on the board. I expect this to be another close game between Baltimore and the Chargers. You can't leave points on the board. Tucker has to hit on his opportunities. Now, on the other side, David, what are 3 things the Chargers have to do to win this game?
Yeah, so 3 things that the Chargers absolutely have to do to win this game. Winning in the red zone. They got to play complementary football, and they got to win in the fourth quarter. So winning in the red zone, the Chargers have to find a way to get a couple stops in the red zone. The Ravens have the best red zone offense in the league.
Yep.
They score touchdowns on 77.8% of their red zone trips, which is a lot, okay. The Chargers got 2 stops in the red zone last week against the Bengals, and that was quite frankly the difference in the game. They score one of those touchdowns. It's it's a different looking ball game there. The Chargers have the second best red zone defense in the NFL this year. So we're going up against great versus great. The Chargers only allow touchdowns on 40.1% of their red zone trips there. So they do an excellent job. They need to continue to do that. You get 1 or 2 stops where you turn 7 into 3. Those are winning plays in matchups like this where your margin for error is so razor thin. This right here in the middle of the season on a Monday night, this is a playoff caliber game. Don't get me wrong, okay? So you need to play playoff caliber football, which means you got to be as close to perfect as possible, which leads me to my next thing, playing complementary football. The Chargers offense needs to help the defense against this offense. The Chargers can't afford any of those offensive droughts that we've seen in the second half of games. They need to put together consistent scoring drives in the second half. And of course, they need the defense to force a turnover, get an interception, force a fumble. You got to be able to get the ball back, create a short field for your offense, and then win in the fourth quarter. Last one here. Last week, the Chargers started great. They dominated the first half, but they gave up 3 straight touchdowns to tie the ball game. Unfortunately, they won it late, but you can't take your foot off the gas. You got to put points up in that fourth quarter. Ravens second and fourth quarter scoring, second and second half scoring. The Chargers 24th in fourth quarter scoring, 29th in second half scoring. So it's just been really bad in that perspective. You can't have it in this game on Monday night. If the Chargers have a lead in the fourth quarter, you got to finish it. Go out there. That's when you want to run the ball. That's when you want to establish and dominate the line of scrimmage, when you're going to go put the game away and finish in victory formation. As last week proved, the best offenses in the NFL can put points up in a hurry So you got to play 4 full quarters of football to win.
Yeah, man, both these teams have some fourth quarter scaries. And I know that you mentioned those Ravens stats in the fourth quarter. A lot of that heavy lifting from both those Bengals games, which are just absolute shootouts.
Yes, they were.
Those took years off my life. And I know that the Bengals just take years off of everybody's life.
They sure do.
That's what it is. You get a win, but it costs you. So
yeah,
that's what that comes down to. But I expect a good game here. Obviously, as we talked about, plenty of storylines. You can look any which way for them. But at the end of the day, this game is massive because you talk about playoff implications, as we talked about at the top of the show. Looks like Houston is probably going to be locked into that 4 seed unless something else changes. And you're looking at Buffalo, Kansas City, and whoever wins the North between Baltimore and Pittsburgh is that maybe 3 seed, maybe 2 seed.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of people are looking at that Houston team. They look good against Dallas, but it's Dallas, right?
Dallas with a backup quarterback.
Yeah, it's Dallas. So I think a lot of people might be licking their chops to play Houston in that 5-4 game. And if the Chargers can win this game, they put more of a hold. I mean, look, this is the head-to-head right here.
Yeah.
And that when you talk about playoff implications, tiebreakers are huge. So might not be thinking about a game in mid to late November, but when we're looking at late December, we're going to be looking back on this game and talking about, well, man, if only the Ravens won, or if only the Chargers had won, that's going to be a massive, massive thing. David is awesome and provides awesome Chargers insight. I'm really looking forward to this game and diving into more of it as we continue covering it throughout the rest of the week here. But that's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in on the way out. Be sure to hit that like button, that subscribe button in video form, as well as following along and subscribing in audio form as well. 2 awesome, awesome communities. Also, social media, subtext, the whole 9 yards. Coming up tomorrow, we'll be riding out a weekday episodes with more Ravens coverage. So be sure to stay tuned, and I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.